Hey everybody, it's Greg LaBeouf here with you. I got Coach Dustin, Coach Brad with me. It's Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Here we are, Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. I want to thank you guys for all joining us. We got a really cool episode tonight. We are going to dive deep into the concept, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Okay, this is a very powerful concept. You don't want to miss this one. Back in 30 seconds. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Myself and my family from violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years, I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. All right, guys, definitely not a new topic for us. We talk about this all the time, but I thought that because last episode we went deep into the doom on you mindset, and I really set up. I wanted people to have a really good contrast, right? Bad guys, violent criminals have an evil mindset, right? Their greatest weapon is the human mind and its capacity to think evil. Well, listen, we're all human beings, which means we all have the capacity to think evil. We all can get into the dark thoughts, but we have to draw a line between the violent criminals who don't give a fuck. They have no moral code. They don't give a fuck about society's laws and rules. They don't give a fuck. Okay, but we had to draw a line. What's the contrast? When you have good people, good law-abiding people, people with a moral conscience. Right? People who have a clear definition of right versus wrong. People who are not looking to injure or hurt anybody else. They just want to live their own life, right? So we said, listen, you have to train. You have to weaponize your mind to have a doom on you mindset. You have to be able to think, like, again, they're thinking evil. They're going to come to harm us and the people that we love. Well, doom on you. Doom on all the bullshit that you think you're going to do because my life fucking matters. The life of my family matters, and I'm willing to protect that. Okay, so this week I thought, listen, we got to re-examine this. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Because obviously in many aspects of life, cheating is frowned upon, obviously, and with good reason. Okay, now we all get that. I shouldn't have to spend any time setting that part of it up, right? There's lots of times in life when cheating is not right, it's not good, it's amoral, it's unfair, all that type of stuff. But violence isn't one of those times, folks. Violent criminal assault, asocial violence, where it is reasonable for you to believe that you're facing grievous bodily harm or death, that is not the time to have a moral compass around cheating. Okay, so let's jump in and define this a little bit, right? I said that tonight we're going to offer some of the best cheat codes. Okay, everyone understands what a cheat code is. I don't play video games, but I've played them, and I do understand that there are cheat codes. And cheat codes allow you to defeat the big boss, clear the level, gain more money or points, whatever the fuck. You want the cheat codes. Most people, you know what I mean? Again, it's a way to simplify the game. Well, in violence, we want cheat codes. We want to simplify the shit. When you're fighting for your life and the life of your family, and you're outgunned and you're outmanned against people that are thinking fucking evil, insidious in their thought and action, ruthless in thought and action, cheat codes are a very fucking good thing. Okay, so now, definition of cheating is to do something, to act dishonestly or unfairly to gain an advantage. Okay, just a very basic general definition. Okay, now, one of the things that I would set up first that's important for the understanding. Cheating is only possible when there are rules, whether those rules are written or implied. Okay, otherwise cheating isn't even possible. So, and I'm going to throw this to you guys because I want to get your visceral opinions on if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. But this, to me, you could end the podcast on this. Really try to get your mind around this. Cheating only exists if there are rules, whether those rules are written or implied. And then I'm going to expand it out one. Most people, depending on who you are, your brain is going to go, well, there are fucking rules in society. They're called laws. And you can't just go around using the tool of violence, cheating with the tool of violence, and injuring good, innocent people. Well, fuck, of course not. But we're talking about when violent criminals, right, are threatening grievous bodily harm or death to you or your loved ones or other innocent people, you have the legal right to defend yourself up to and including lethal force. We've seen it many times. All the way up to the Supreme Court in Canada has ruled in favor of individuals, good moral individuals, using up to and including lethal force to protect themselves and other innocent people. Okay, so now what I want people to get is, if there are all of a sudden, when you cross this line and you're facing grievous bodily harm or death, you are legally and morally, in my opinion, entitled to use whatever force necessary to stop that individual from executing on that grievous bodily harm or death. You can use whatever force is necessary to end the threat to your life or the life of your family or innocent people. So at that point, we are in a realm where there is one rule, and the rule is you are entitled to the right to life. You have the right to life. What rule, written or implied, surpasses a human's right to life? So all of a sudden now we're in this area where if people just get that, cheating is only possible when there are written or implied rules and you are breaking those rules. But the second you start to really sit in the realm of lethal force against asocial violence, when you're really sitting in your right to life, when all of a sudden that is the only thing that matters, is that you have the right to life and somebody is trying to infringe upon that right to life. And failure to act on that right to life means death. So you have to protect it. Well, you or somebody else. And if you're waiting for Superman to arrive, you're waiting for somebody else, you've probably forfeited your right to life. Because the likelihood of Superman showing up or the police showing up or the government showing up or anybody like that is very slim. Paul used to say it's slim to none and none's on his way to the airport. Sorry, Slim's on his way to the airport. Yeah, two choices, slim and none, and Slim's on his way to the airport. So you're fucked. Okay? So if that hits, all of a sudden what I'm trying to do is now there should be no moral barrier. Or the only barrier that would exist would be your own moral compass. And then you'd have to ask yourself, well, why do I have moral opposition when we are dealing with my right to life? And for some people, they would rather die. They would rather be murdered than inflict harm onto another human being, no matter how evil, atrocious, vile that person is. They would rather die. That is their right. That is their choice. That is their belief system. And I'm not judging it, but there are those out there. And so for them, they could not go against their moral rules. Okay, so just viscerally, guys, give me your first impressions on what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, obviously, and I had the many thoughts as you were talking through all of that. But I think a couple that stood out were, like we say every single week, because it's so important, context determines content. And that's what you just did a really good job of explaining. What context are we talking about? Not a fight, not sport, violence. So I'm not going to repeat it because you did a really good job of explaining it. But I think that's where you would tend to get a lot of pushback when you start to talk about something like this, is because people right away, no matter what you say, their brain wants to go to their kind of familiar reference point, which is going to be a fight, not true violence. And I think a lot of those arguments would fall short the second you really truly get them to understand the context of what a violent assault is. So, that was one thing. The other thing was when you talked about, having the right, in Canada and lots of other places to do, what is necessary to preserve your life. And I think one word that people may gloss over, but is critical, is the word necessary. Because you're not saying you have the right to do whatever you want, or you have the right to do whatever you feel like you should or could, or it's necessary. So yeah, up to and including, killing somebody. Yeah, but it's still necessary. Right. And I just think it's just such an important word. Like without that word, it changes everything. So I just thought it was worth kind of mentioning and pointing that out, that we're talking in the context of what's necessary, the amount of force necessary. Yep. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I agree with everything, obviously, both of you guys said. One thing that I think I could jump off of where Dustin was when people even have that frame of mind where they're thinking, okay, I understand what you're talking about. This isn't a fight. This isn't anything like that. This is, if someone was trying to kill me, when we're sitting here having a conversation in the comfort of our homes, in our intellectual mind, I think a lot of people could easily, well, I would do this, or I would have no problem doing this. And, some of those things may come out. They may come out. But I also think that the mentality to think evil in the face of violence, to be cunning, to really embrace the if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, is that doesn't happen by accident. It's trained, it's conditioned, it's developed, and I think that there would be a little bit of a disconnect um, between just kind of that mentality. And the other thing is too, when we talked about the laws, one of the biggest restrictors I think is just the uncertainty when it comes to defending your life and defending yourself within the society we live in, rightfully justified or not. I think in a moment, if you don't, if you haven't trained it, you haven't conditioned it, you don't understand it, there becomes that seed of uncertainty, and you don't want it to be growing when you're facing violence in that moment. So again, just a couple things that popped in my head visually off of the intro.
Okay, so what are you guys both talking about? What you're talking about is the barriers to cheating. Like and like Dustin, you said the context determines the content. We say it all the time. But why did I set that up? Because that's exactly what will happen. Is instantaneously what bubbles up in people is a barrier. And like I said, cheating only exists if there's a law, if you're breaking a law, whether that's written or implied. And what we're saying is that everybody has a barrier. If we haven't worked through this, then there's a barrier. So either A, you go, well, legally, you can't fucking do that. Right now, people would listen to this and go, you can't do that in Canada, you're going to fucking jail. Like nobody in Canada has ever used self-defense up to and including lethal force and been cleared of all charges. Like has just gone on living that. Well, I can send you tons of articles. You can buy Barry's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, and you can you can study case law. Right? And case law is important because case law is how the courts have actually ruled, not studying the criminal code, because the criminal code is open to interpretation. I'm not saying you shouldn't know the criminal code. I'm saying you got to study case law because case law is telling you how the courts have ruled and why they've ruled it. That's where you get it, right? So get the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, and start educating yourself and understand case law, because the reality is that there are absolutely times as a Canadian citizen that we are entitled to, the courts have ruled this, to be able to use lethal force to defend ourselves or our loved ones. Absolutely. Now remember, you might not actually end up taking their life, but you have to be prepared because you say, listen, we've entered into this realm where it's my right to life that I am exercising. And I have that right. What right supersedes the right to life? Because without life, no other right is worth anything. You're dead. So the right to life is the right. And we have the right to protect that. Okay, so that's one barrier that we're saying not. That's why I call that's one of our four dominoes. That people, they don't understand it because they've never studied it, and they just go off a lot of like, my friend Bob, who's a cop, said this, and this guy knows this, and this guy knows this, and my dad's a lawyer, and even though he does, he doesn't do criminal, whatever. It's just a whole bunch of fucking bullshit and misinformation. And so you got to get straight on that because that's a barrier. And the second barrier that Brad's kind of talking about is, again, there's this moral barrier where it's just like either people, again, it's like, I would do this and I would do this and I would do that or whatever. They say all of these things, but it's an intellectual exercise. And an intellectual exercise, seldom does that pass the litmus test of reality. So sitting in the comfort of your own home, as Brad said, and just espousing all of these manly things to say. If I'd fuck with my kids, I'd fucking kill that guy. I'd cut his nuts off. I got a gun. I would shoot him. Like it's all stupid. It's ridiculous. It's all propaganda. Okay, you got to actually study and train this stuff. So first rule to the cheat codes is that you have to actually address the barriers, and how you do that is by weaponizing your mind, by educating, by studying it. Right? Having somebody that has studied, having them educate you and teach you, so you go, okay, now I can see it for what it really is. Okay? Because, and then now you understand the area, the little area, there's like a little vacuum there where lethal force is legal and necessary. As Dustin said, this is a very important word. There's a myriad of situations where lethal force is not necessary and therefore not warranted, right? Not legally or morally warranted or lawful. So, if we can take down the barriers to cheating, and this is my kind of thing, if you took the average person, or when you take the average person, because we do this, when you take the average person and you can get them into that space, to me it's like I get them into this like empty room, this empty space, where The rules are gone. The constraints of society are not there. And they're not there because the only thing that exists is your right to life. And you can do anything to protect that right to life. So now cheating doesn't exist. Pure self-defense does. Protecting does. And a hard thing with that for many people is that in order to protect, to defend, to act on your right to life, you you will most likely have to injure somebody else. Up to and including potentially lethal force. But all of a sudden we go in there, now the mind has this space where it's like, holy shit. And probably for the first time in many people's lives, they're in this place where there are no rules. Like most people have kind of, either most people have seen shows like apocalypse shows, like Walking Dead or something like that, where society has fallen and there's the fucking undead or whatever. There's some sort of threat, and it's like literally it's like a fight for your life. It's a fight for survival. And people watch these shows and they put themselves, I would do this and I would do this, and they kill and they protect and they all this type of stuff. Yet that's a fantasy. It exists in this kind of fantasy realm. And nobody's really come into the real world and kind of said, geez, there's this time at 3 o'clock in the morning when 3-4 people are in my house trying to fucking, sexually assault my wife, grab my kids, fucking beat me to death, tie me to bed, fucking burn me, like whatever the fuck they're trying to do. And again, all you got to do is, go to Netflix right now and just watch how many fucking documentaries on serial killers and murderers and crime sprees and everything else where you want to see the horrific outcome of, violent individuals who are on some sort of a fucking spree or having some sort of a mental, emotional fucking breakdown, a psychotic break, and these people just don't give a fuck. In this moment where you're like, I now have to defend against that, you're there with just one thing and one thing only, and that is your right to life. And then the only other thing that's in the room is your skills and knowledge and capability and willingness to act on that right. So cheating in that realm doesn't exist. And I'm trying to take a different approach because imagine if from day one of your self-defense training, your personal protection training, from day one, you started in that realm. Like you started there. And it's like, a very simple sentence. We treat, like when we start training, the Weaponized 16, when we start our program, we treat every encounter as if it's a life and death encounter. That's where we start. Not every encounter you come into is going to be life and death, but you do not rise to an expectation, you fall to a level of training. If you're going to build a house, I would think, without being a home builder, I would think that the foundation that you build upon is pretty important. I don't know, I could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure...
I wouldn't start with the roof.
Yeah, exactly. So, and yet that freaks people out. Like if you start, listen, day one you come to me and I say, listen, I have no idea how much time you might have before you face a righteous moment in your life. A dark, critical moment where your life or the life of your loved ones is endangered by violent fucking criminals who outgun and outman you, who don't give a flying fuck about your moral code or the laws and rules of society. They just don't give a fuck. I don't know if that's going to happen in 6 hours from now or 6 days from now or 6 months or 6 years from now. So the first thing that I'm going to do is we're going to show you and teach you how to prepare for lethal force. Because it is infinitely easier to throttle those strategies, tactics, and tools down to deal with antisocial aggression, to deal with lesser situations, but the reverse is not true. You cannot, it is infinitely harder, I won't say you can't, it is infinitely harder to throttle those up, and in the stress of a life and death encounter like that, to all of a sudden put together a kill chain. Like to all of a sudden go, fuck, there's no rules in this shit. This ain't a fucking fight. There's nothing fair about this bullshit. And not only that, but I have to now how do I cheat? How do I gain an advantage? There is no fair and unfair. It's just like, what can you fucking do? Because if you can't do what they can do, you're dead. It's that fucking simple. And they are cheating. Because they're violent fucking criminals. I mean, anybody, if you ask them to role play the criminal and say, how would you take down a house with, let's say you got 4 adults in that house, you know? How do you, and then, you know, a bunch of, like, how do you take them down? Well, it's not hard to start, your brain will start going to this very dark place where you start going, well, I would do this and this and this, and everything that comes out of their mouth is cheating, which really isn't, but you get what I'm saying, right? None of it's going to be, well, I'll tell you what, the first thing I do is, I got wrestling skills. I do a quick arm drag, take the back, pull them to the ground, do a nice double leg grab, you know, put them on the ground, you know, mount, ground pound, wear them down, grind. Like, I mean, they don't talk style and techniques. That and most people, they would be like, well, of course they don't, because they're bad people. Okay, so, you know, this is where this, and I'll bridge into that in a second, but this is an important space to get people into, which is why I'm spending time. Because like I said, we could just do the whole podcast on this. Because if you get the light bulb to come on, anyone listening to this, if the light bulb comes on, if it hasn't already, like if it hasn't before, but if the light bulb comes on, you start all of a sudden going, holy fuck. I actually have spent very little time in that space where there are no rules. This is life and death. The only thing that exists is my right to life, and can I protect it, and what am I willing to do? Because just now saying I'll do anything, I'll do whatever, I don't give a fuck. Well, that you said nothing. I don't give a fuck. I'd shoot him, I'd stab him, I'd beat him with a rock, I'd do anything. Again, you're just saying a bunch of words that to the uneducated sounds really aggressive, sounds really ruthless. It sounds correct. But when you're talking to people that are educated in violence and have spent a lifetime weaponizing and honing the tool of violence, you sound like you're in kindergarten. See spot run. Spot run fast. Like you're cavemaning it. Like you can tell you have no formal education. That's the whole nature behind the podcast, is to help share with people and try to educate people in a topic that most people don't want to fucking talk about. Most people don't want to hear about it. Their brain doesn't want to go to this. The problem with preparing for the very worst thing is that you first have to go there mentally. You have to actually make it real. You have to go, shit, this fucking shit happens. That's again, not easy to do. It takes time, it takes coaching, it takes people that understand how to expose you to that in the right ways to get so that inoculation happens, not traumatization. Right? And you definitely don't want to wait to experience it, because that's fucked up. That'll lead to a lot of trauma. Okay, so is there anything else off that? So again, I'm just hammering this because if you get there and now you're in this room where you're like, I'm free. Now you should start going, give me these fucking cheat codes. Like, how do I educate it so that I'll say this right now because, and then you guys maybe can jump in off this. I think this is a good setup. People will talk style and techniques, right? Because this is self-defense. And people go, well, self-defense, Greg, like, well, that's what self-defense is. It's like, do I train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and then I use my Jiu-Jitsu to defend myself? I train in Muay Thai. I don't care what you train in. Put in your art or your style, and you could say, well, I love it because these techniques are super functional, whatever it is. But when you talk style and techniques, and here's this, and give me your opinion on this, guys. Style and technique, that type of training, is absolutely a cheat. That's a cheat code. Style and training is a cheat code. But it's only a cheat code when the violent criminal has no training. Do you get what I mean? Like, that can be a cheat code because you got a violent criminal who is like, Brazilian what? Like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I've never seen it. I don't know what you're talking about. Why are you wrapping your legs around me? What the fuck is this? What are you going to do with this shit? Like, they've never seen it. Now your style or your technique becomes a cheat code. But here's the thing. I actually don't call it cheating. I call it preparation. You see, this is another concept that I think a lot of people, like, it kind of blows their mind when they get this. Most people go, okay, listen, there's bad people in this world, and I better learn to defend myself. And so they sign up, take a martial art, some sort of course, training, whatever it is. They pick a style, they do whatever they do, combative sport, whatever. Now they are preparing themselves. And that preparation is valuable, right? It absolutely is valuable. But it's more valuable when the person attacking you knows nothing and they actually try to fight you. They just attack you. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Now, what happens when this person who has prepared, let me ask you, let me do it this way. How does that preparation fail? How does that preparation fail?
I think the biggest thing is if it's conditional. You know, we talked about that. I don't remember if that was last week during the podcast or after the podcast, or it was in person. Anyway, 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so we talked about it. But
yeah, conditional.
I think it fits in perfectly right here. Is if what you've done to prepare, so let's just say it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is like you said, well, that's great. If the other person has no idea what Jiu-Jitsu is, has never done Jiu-Jitsu, and also is by themselves and doesn't have weapons, and it's like all these conditions have to fall into place, and if they do, perfect, great cheat code, but it only works in those perfect conditions. And so it's like, yeah, it is a cheat code, but man, you're taking on a ton of risk because you have all these conditions that have to be met for it to actually work, right?
100%.
I also think the environment that you are downloading those cheat codes matters, because if you look at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you look at Muay Thai, you look at karate, you look at all those things, they all have rules attached to them. Like underlying kind of foundational things, like when they go to compete their art, which is what they're based on. So if that environment that cheat code is downloaded in, if it doesn't have the ultimate, yes, this is an art, but our 100% main focus is to apply this against violent criminal assault, which I think very little do, then it's like you're still going to have this psychic hindrances when it comes to violence.
Yeah, like 100%. You know, the podcast we did on conditional self-defense is 100% bang on with this.
Yeah.
When I train in an art and the other person doesn't, that can be a cheat for me, because it's like, oh, hey, man, that's unfair. That really gave you an advantage. You understand leverage and sensitivity. You understand how to use your legs and your body and jiu-jitsu on the ground to choke me. You understand how to gain leverage with these kicks and you know how to target the body and thigh kick and all this kind of stuff. And like we said, what happens to this preparation? So I call that preparation. And preparation is phenomenal. And preparation can easily be defeated when somebody cheats. That's why the violent criminal goes, there's two of them, and the guy fucking does a thigh kick and breaks his buddy's fucking femur bone. Like, kicks him so fucking hard that his fucking femur bone splits in half, and the guy's got a compound fracture, fucking, screaming, like falling on the ground, writhing, and the guy's like, holy fuck, pulls his gun out and shoots the guy in the chest. Because he's like, well, fuck that. I'm not getting kicked like that. That's bullshit. I don't want to fucking have my femur bone broken. So preparation can fail, okay? And it fails when somebody cheats. So now what happens is you go, well, fuck, now I got to face the cheater. And this is where it comes into like two things. If the violent criminals are cheating, they're going, I don't know if you've prepared or not. I don't know if you've trained in some art or not. I don't know. But on the off chance that you have, I'm just going to cheat from the get-go. And so when the cheater comes in, you then might go, well, fuck, I can cheat too. The problem is that spontaneous cheating has worked, and it can work, but premeditated cheating is even better. And this is where I'm like, okay, and to try to just relate it in terms that many people understand, because many people understand it, they think in terms of fights. They think one-on-one. They think one-dimensionally. Self-defense is not always one-on-one, but they think even if it's 2-3 guys, we're going to have a fight. And even though I can punch this guy, punch that guy, punch this guy, and I'm fighting 3 guys. But you're fighting 3 guys that are trying to fight you, not 2 or 3 guys that are cheating. that are just like, I'm thinking evil. I'm just going to shoot you, stab you, club you. I'm going to ambush you. I'm going to get you while you're sleeping. I'm going to get you while you're holding your kid. I'm going to get you whatever, whatever, whatever. Just cheat, cheat, cheat. Evil, evil, evil. Okay. What happens is that when they're cheating, and then you go, okay, well, I can spontaneously cheat and try to like, oh, there's a rock, grab a rock and try to hit him with a rock. That's great. But the premeditated cheating, that's what we're talking about. Now you connect that to like, the second you start off and say, we look at every violent encounter, every encounter as a life and death situation. That's where we're going to start. And so right from day one, we just go, okay, where are we at? What space are we in? What's the context? We're in the place where there are no rules. The only rules that can exist there are self-imposed rules, your moral rules, because only thing that's there is right to life. So legally, what right supersedes the right to life? None. There's no law. There's nothing that supersedes the right to life. When you're in that, you have no rules other than the ones that are self-imposed. And if you get rid of those, now what would you do? What would you do? Most people in this situation, even without any training, when they really understand the context of what we're talking about, they got the finger on the pulse of what we're talking about, the last thing they would think about is a style or a technique. Their brain would automatically go, is there something there that I can stab him with? Can I impale him on something? Can I smash him with something? Can I can I rip his fucking eyes out? Can I bite a hole through his fucking face? Or can I bite a hole through his fucking neck? Can I what can I do? The Prime Minister of Canada, when awoken in his bedroom, while supposedly being guarded by his own personal security force, woke up in the middle of the night to find a stranger in the bedroom, him and his wife there. The first thing he did, now I'm not saying our Prime Minister is a black belt in jiu-jitsu or anything like that, or a Thai boxer, but what John Gretchen did was reach on his bedstand and pick up the heaviest motherfucking sharpest edge statue he could and threaten to beat, and go to beat the guy over the fucking head with the statue. What did he do? Well, in that context, what room was he existing in? The only thing that existed was right to life. That's it, right to life. And so he was going to do whatever the fuck to act on his right to life. And so that was a great example of spontaneous cheating. Because the second he picked up and went to whack that guy, here's my thought process, and this guides me in our training. When we have new people come in, treat every situation in the beginning. We're going to build a foundation. The foundation has to be the worst case scenario, which is always going to be lethal force. What's worse than somebody trying to murder you? Nothing. There's nothing worse. It doesn't get any worse. Because if they succeed, you're dead. So there is nothing worse than that. The whole thing should be this. You want to try to get your attacker to say or think, that's not fucking fair. Imagine that for a second. What does that take to get a violent criminal who comes into the situation cheating? Comes into the situation cheating, and all of a sudden he goes, that's fucking not fair. Right? He thinks it or feels, that's not fucking fair. What would you have to do? What would you have to do to create that type of environment? To create those types of conditions? And again, I'm just going to, because I'm throwing this out there because this is powerful. Violent criminals anticipate preparation. If you're an MMA fighter, if you're a martial artist, amateur to professional, and you are going to a tournament, amateur to professional, in whatever sport or art you practice, do you for 1 second believe, assume, or expect that the people you face that day in that tournament are not prepared? Meaning, do you believe that they have not been training? They do not know the art? They have you get what I mean? Like, of course not. That would be ridiculous to think that, right? Nobody would think that. Like, that's insane to think that. That's the whole reason you're going there. Stop. Do you martial artists and combat athletes think for 1 second that violent criminals who have assaulted, raped, and murdered They've done this, right? Do you think for 1 second that they run off the expectation or the belief that you have done no preparation, and therefore they can just walk right up to you and fight you and be like, well, I'm a better fighter? It doesn't make sense to do that. They wouldn't be very good criminals. They would be probably dead criminals, or they, whatever. Criminals are going, oh yeah, more and more motherfuckers out there are doing this jujitsu thing. And I said it like they don't know what that is. They know what it is. They too are practicing that jujitsu thing. You think they don't practice boxing? You think they don't practice kicking? You think they don't do that? Take a look at some prison, CCTV footage of inmates and see how they spend their time. See how they spend their time working out. See the things they're doing. You think they don't roll their mattresses up and use them as punching bags? You think they don't sit on top of their mattresses and practice ground and pound and pulling and holding guard? Now, they might not be the best educated because they don't typically invest a lot of time and energy into really good training and instruction, all right? But you think they don't watch UFCs, and you think they don't see this shit? And now, on top of that pedigree, which you go, yeah, but these guys are so amateurish. They're just doing their own shit. But in addition to their homegrown MMA style of training, they are being educated in criminality. They're living a life immersed in criminality. So they know or already possess unregistered firearms. They have and carry with them knives, when a lot of good people are like, I'm not carrying a fucking knife. And I'm not talking like tiny little Swiss Army knives. They roll in groups, like, you know what I mean? We talked about this thing. They are already going, well, these aren't cheat codes to them. This is how the game is played.
They also have the benefit, or the cheat code, if you will, of a mindset. We talk about them going to jail like they're going to university. They're getting PhDs in how to be a better violent criminal, and they're learning from the best of the best, the other criminals.
Yeah. Do
you know what I mean? So they're coming in like, yeah, they have weapons, everything you're saying, but like they also don't have the same psychic hindrance in using those cheat codes that the everyday average person does, right? So we haven't spent a ton of time talking about that, but it's like the whole psychological side of training too. It's like, if you don't have that, I mean, in a critical moment, like, yeah, maybe you'll be like Jean Chrétien and pick up that statue, but like, there's a whole lot more to it than just picking up some physical object and trying to implement it, right?
100%.
Not to mention trying to draw on creativity in a moment where someone's undergoing, full sympathetic nervous system like overload.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Now you're going to try to be creative and come up with an idea to cheat to win in that moment? You might, but again, how much risk are you taking on?
Yeah, huge. Yep. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I think hopefully we've got this point down. Martial arts training is what I call preparedness. It's great to be prepared, right? Boy Scout model. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not, or better to have it, not need it, than need it and not have it. So preparedness is great, but understand the violent criminals are going to cheat. Cheating typically trumps preparedness. Okay, especially when the bad guys are privy to how you are preparing. They can study martial arts, they can study jiu-jitsu, they can learn it online, they have access to your playbook. Okay? So they're cheating and circumventing, running their own playbook. What we are talking about now is, premeditated cheating. How do we learn to cheat? What they don't have access to is, because it's not prevalent, is, like, for example, our entire playbook is how to cheat the cheater. And if people can get that, you're like, how do you cheat the cheater? And how do you cheat a cheater? Well, you use his own strategies and systems against him. I'll say this to reinforce my point. Michael Jordan was once interviewed, and he was asked if you could play 5 players, past or present, if you could play any 5 players one-on-one, who would they be? And how does he think he would do against them? And, he went through this person, and of course, one of the people that he said was Kobe Bryant. And he said, and the only person that I see even having a chance at beating me would be Kobe Bryant. And they asked him, why is that? And the short answer of that is because he stole all his moves. He goes, Kobe Bryant studied me. He studied me and he stole all my plays. He was using my playbook. He played like me. He took what I was doing to other people, which made me great. He did that. Now, he wasn't taken away and saying he's obviously the guy's got enough talent to do Michael Jordan's type shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, clearly. So there's a massive praise in that. But what I'm getting at is, isn't that interesting? So the bad guys, they have a cheat book. They have a playbook. And that playbook is the antidote to preparedness. Preparedness being style, techniques, martial art, and combat sport training. So what we do is that's why I always say, you can't understand violence by studying competitive sport or the art of fighting. You have to study violence. And then your playbook, you take their playbook, their strategies, their tactics, and you fucking use it against them. And that's the interesting parallel. It's so funny, like I've said this before, and this analogy is really interesting, but when I watch movies, and you watch the bad guys in the movies, and you watch like how the terrorists attack and take down people, and you watch how the bad guy takes down all these people and all this type of stuff, that's the guy. I'm watching that movie going, yep, that's what I do. That's what I do. Yep, that's that. Yep. And always you watch the good guys get destroyed because their preparedness couldn't match up to the cheat. The cheat code thrashes the preparedness. And then inevitably, the Rambo or whoever takes some of their own plays and tactics and goes outside of the law and goes outside of whatever, and he fucking gives them a taste of their own medicine. Right? Richard Marcinko, who's the creator of SEAL Team 6, the original founder of it, and Devereaux Group of stuff, which became Devereaux Group, Red Cell. Read some of Marcinko's earlier stuff, and this guy had that mindset. In Vietnam, he's like, listen, fuck that shit. We eat what they eat. I wear what they wear. Because he goes, when I go in the jungle, I don't want to smell like a fucking American because I'm eating American food. Like, this is how these guys are doing, counterinsurgency, and we're going to take their fucking playbook and we're going to use it against them. Two can play at that game. You get what I mean? And it's like, well, why did that work for special operations? Why did that work for in warfare, in that type of warfare? Because it's asymmetrical strategies. That's why that stuff works in guerrilla warfare. And it's like, it's boggling to me why the average person can't see this and go, listen, preparedness is only going to get me so far. If I'm preparing and Dustin's preparing, well, then what's going to separate us? It used to be that, well, my art's superior to your art. Okay, so maybe that's why I win, because my art is superior to your art. Well, does that really even exist anymore? Not really. Because you might be a better athlete. So my art might be superior, but I might be inferior. You have better timing, spatial awareness, placement accuracy, power, follow through, emotional content, flexibility, whatever the fuck. You're just got better all around attributes. So I fucking lose. Preparedness is so easy to circumvent. Mike Tyson gets in the ring with Evander Holyfield. Things aren't going well. What does he do? He bites him. What happens? Evander Holyfield jumps up and down like a 3-year-old having a temper tantrum trying to throw his gloves off. Why? Because Mike Tyson cheated, and it was so outside the norm. Now listen, if it was a street thing, maybe Evander Holyfield would have tried to bite him back. But typically, firstest with the mostest is the bestest. Because Tyson probably wouldn't have stopped biting. Probably would have had half of Vander's face off by the time they pulled him that fucking animal off that guy. So preparedness, it's not hard to circumvent. If I, again, we've said this analogy before, but if I took a guy that was really well trained and a guy that had absolutely no training, but he's a healthy individual, and I said, okay, well, live or die, buddy. But you got to take this guy out of commission. And if you don't, you die. I would put my money on the guy with no training. Because the guy with training is far more predictable in his behavior. He's far less likely to go outside of his preparedness. because he's got a bias. I spent all this time doing this and I'm training to a high level of this. The other guy can at least go, I recognize that and I ain't getting into any of that shit, because if he gets a hold of me that way, I'm fucked. So I'm just going to ambush him. I'm just going to, I'll time it, I'll cheat, I'll shoot, I'll whatever the fuck it is. He's just going to figure out cheat codes. And then he's going to use those cheat codes. And that'll be the end of that. So again, I'm trying to come at this from different angles and get people to understand and just view it. Training is preparedness. Bad guys cheat. Premeditated cheating is understanding the bad guy's cheat code and taking it, refining those, and using their own strategies, tactics, and tools against them. And guess what happens to bad guys when all of a sudden their way of thinking, acting, moving, and doing is all of a sudden being applied to them with pure conviction, killer instinct, and ruthlessness? What do they say? What do they think? It's not fucking fair. It's not fucking fair. That's my shit. What do you fucking do? You can't do that. You're the good guy. You're the prey.
That's not how this goes. I attack you, you submit, maybe you posture, I smack you, and I steal your shit or whatever it is. But it's
or you try to armbar me. You try to take me down, and that's why I got my buddies with me. That's when they stab you in the kidneys. Like, you get mount, and then they stab you in the kidney. That's how this goes. Like, you don't fuck with the natural order of things. I'm the bad guy. But really, it's like, no, in this situation, doom on you, I'm the fucking bad. I'm your bad guy. You're not my bad guy. I'm your bad guy. Like Colonel Grossman, Dave Grossman once told me, we were talking, and he said he had his grandson and they went out for a walk and they were walking the dog, and his grandson looked up to him. He's probably like 6 or 7 at the time, and his grandson said, I think we better go back to the house. And Colonel Grossman was like, why? And he goes, well, it's getting dark. And he goes, yeah, it's getting dark, but that's okay. Like, why should we go back? He said, because there's scary things in the dark. And he stopped and he got down on his knee, looked at his grandson and says, you're absolutely right. There are scary things in the dark, and we're it. We are the scariest thing that is walking the night tonight. We got our guard dogs. He's armed. We got knives. We got training. We got the will set. We got the mind. We got the strategies. Like, and if somebody comes at us, man, like, our playbook is set. Like, and it ain't, we're not looking for a fight here. We will be going home. You know what I mean? And that mindset, like, we are the scary things. And like, that bad guy, I'm that bad guy's bad guy. And that's really hard for some people to get. But yet, that is how you survive. That is how good people survive. We don't send the very best of us, our soldiers, our tier 1 operators. We don't send them into hell. They go in there and they are using asymmetrical strategies. They're what the bad guys are doing. They are doing it to them, and they're doing it better. They're doing it aggressive. They're doing it better, and they're doing it because when the trigger gets pulled and these guys go, it's because we're at that place where this is right to life stuff. And in war, and when you're at that level in war, I'm not saying there's no rules of engagement in war and all this type of stuff. There's lots of other different situations, just the parallels the same. But when those guys are hunting, they're hunting because if they don't, lives will be lost. Mission failure equates to lives lost. So, this is where we're at with this. Okay, so real quick here, as we're going to wrap this up, I want to go into some of these cheat codes because, again, it's harder to be specific if you don't have the mindset to hear it. Okay, but obviously, and you guys can just list off a few too, because I don't want this to be just an intellectual exercise. When it comes to the cheat codes, weapons are obviously a great cheat code, but there are natural, designed, and expedient. Natural are the natural, brutally efficient tools on your body. Designed are anything that is designed, like a gun, a knife, to relay injury to another human being. And then there's expedient. You can pick up a broken bottle. You can, a pool cue, a lead pipe, anything like that is expedient. But here's the caveat with that. Each of those things has a way in which they are maximized. You have to understand how to utilize those things. You don't just pick up, again, spontaneous cheating, someone in a panic or they're there, grabs a pair of scissors and, You know, again, my example is always Antonio Banderas in the first Zorro movie. You know, do you even, you know, picks up the sword and do you even know how to use that? Yes, of course. The pointy end goes into the other man. Like, how hard is that? And it's like, oh, okay, well, there's a lot more to it than just that. And that's what we're talking about. So premeditated. How, like, yes, scissors can be stabbed, but you move them in a certain way. You know, a chair, a bar stool, a Rubbermaid garbage can, a jacket, a hat. These all have, there's ways to maximize the effectiveness of that cheat. So weapons are a great cheat. Throw in any ones that you guys have as well. I always like to talk about time frame because bad guys want to ambush you. They are controlling time. That's one element of the ambush. When you understand how to take time back and use time against them, either by accelerating the timeline or slowing it or stalling it, all very simple things to teach people, right? All just simple tactical concepts that allow you to fuck with the timeline. You can really fuck guys up. And bad guys use that all the time. Okay? So anything you guys have too? Anything you want to throw in that cheat?
Me right off the bat is environment. Using the environment, which does fall in line with your timeline too.
Yeah, that's 100%. Yep.
Alter the timeline, right? Either expedite it or delay it. But also, people don't know how to handle environment. No. It's not something that people like bad guys, other people that are training in other things. It's like they're not using it. They may, and this is the one thing that I've always noticed is like people say they've trained in it, but they haven't trained with it. You know,
100%.
Which is two completely different things. But I don't want to get off topic on that. But like the ability to move in your environment, to use geometric angles, lines of attack that people are just, it's line familiarization. Yeah. And if it's not on our radar to pick up and use environment, then we're going to be fighting toe to toe with another human being, and there's probably going to be more of them. Yeah. And you just consent.
Yeah. Yeah. Environment is massive. And like you said, we tell this people all the time, the environment can be your greatest enemy. You'll trip on it. You'll bump into it. It'll block you. It'll do all this fucking shit. It'll be like there's another man on their team and it is your greatest enemy, or it can be your greatest ally because it can help you manage the distance. It can, like all the things you said is 100% right. That is one of the key cheat codes is, again, not just training. Well, we train in an environment with like chairs around and stuff. No, you got to learn how to train with the environment. So that's a powerful cheat code. Excellent. Really good point. Dustin, anyone else? Any other ones jumping out?
Well, one that, I mean, bad guys use this almost all the time. I would say, not always, but it is mass attack, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, they're going to come with multiple attackers to try and, outnumber you. And so, as much as I've tried to get you guys to be in my entourage and just follow me around, like you guys won't do it. Apparently, you have lives, but that would be in a perfect world. That's how I would use that cheat code against them. But dude, to put us,
it's a paid entourage. Like,
yeah. But it's more we're in negotiations still. Once the price is right, we're in, buddy.
To put a different spin on it, like on the idea of mass attack, is more about your VIPs, your family. And obviously there's the obvious of like, oh, make sure your spouse trains, make sure your kids train if they're of appropriate age and capability. But to put even a different spin on it than that, I think it's just having your VIPs aware of what violence is and how does violence happen and how can they best serve in that moment. And that may not be tactically like people think where, oh yeah, my wife needs to know all the same, stuff I do. Great if she does, but if not, does she know what her role is? Does she know that it's her job to have the keys to get the kids to a safe place, to call 911, backup, all that stuff? So it's like you can use mass attack as a cheat code, but in a slightly different way, perhaps, than what the criminals would.
Dude, that is exactly how we do it. That is, again, like the environment, and now you're talking mass attack. When violent criminals attack you, even with your family, they attack you, they are expecting that you are the preparedness, and so their cheating is focused on you.
And they think that that's a weakness. They might choose you because you're with your wife and kid.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden your wife and kids supercharge your capability.
Yes.
That's pretty unexpected.
Yes.
Right.
Imagine it's as if bad guys go, look at this fucking soldier walking alone, and then all of a sudden they jump out to ambush the soldier, and they realize that they've just ambushed a small team. You know what I mean? Of special operations, and they got it's a platoon. I fucking was not ready for this, right? Your wife hits him with a tack light, which distracts him. Like we do drills that are like quarterback receiver drills. Like the setup in this and how all of a sudden your entire family, again, the kids, once they get to a certain age where they are capable of some of their own defensive strategies, they become powerful. And so does that cheat? Does that impact the criminal? Does that get the criminal to say, I fucking didn't see that coming? That's not fucking fair. 100% it fucking does. Right? And it can be very simple things like you just alluded to, the fact that your family just even understands some things. They don't have to be trained at a level of where they can physically engage in a fight, but most are surprised because there's a few things they can do with the tack lights and knives and things like that are such advantage givers that they feel very comfortable very quickly using those in a cheating capacity and being like, I could do that. Yeah, you could do that. You could do that. Not only could you do that, you could do that extremely effectively. And that's going to cause a massive fucking disrupt. So that's a huge cheat code is mass attack, right? What utilizing family versus thinking, I got 10 of my friends with me, right? Very good one. Another one that I'll throw in there too that a lot of people don't get is that I love is behavioral redirects. And just real quickly, a behavioral redirect can connect in with what we call a Trojan horse strategy, which is most people know as nonviolent presentations. I don't want to look. I see all these self-defense guys being like, hands up, hey, I don't want a problem. Hands up, I don't want a problem. Hey, I'm hands up, I don't want a problem. The next thing, then he's headbutting the guy. Hands up, I don't want a problem. Angles by and hitting him with a left hook and stuff like that. Saying hands up and being like, hey, I don't want a problem is not nonviolent presentation. It's a very weak version of nonviolent presentation. And then standing there going, hey, I don't want this, and then firing the headbutt or hitting them with the left hook or whatever it is not like I'd say that I'd classify that down in kindergarten in terms of like weaponized strategies. Behavioral redirects are so much deeper because human beings measure other human beings in three areas: body language, interpersonal communication, specifically not what you're saying, but how you're saying things, so inflection of the voice, and then behavior. So when you learn to use your body language, the inflection in your voice, as well as behavior, and you learn to do it in a way that baits them, leads them, misleads them, it is so fucking powerful, and it is so much deeper than hands up, hey, I don't want any problems, headbutt. Right, like that's kindergarten. You haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what behavioral redirects are. And there's lots of ways to do that: faking illness, faking language barriers. There's so many ways that I'm not even going to get into because I also like to keep those. I like to keep those as part of our playbook, right? So behavioral redirects are huge. What's that?
Those are private cheat codes. Unique to the individual.
Well, they're not secrets, that's for sure, but I'd rather just keep them for people that are training. We know we got good moral people. Okay, so there is lots of those. So even if we just went off those right there, those are probably what we covered, 4 or 5 of the top cheat codes.
Even what we're doing right now, mentality.
100%.
Like we could talk about all this stuff, but if you don't have the mentality to think about it, sit with it, work it, discover it, hone it, it's like you can have all the codes if you want, but it's still like you don't have the mental fortitude to execute them.
Yeah. Let me throw one out I like this one, and maybe this would be a good one to end on because, again, I think it gives the idea because, again, spontaneous cheating is great. You're in something and you're like, that didn't go fucking well, so I'm going to bite the guy, pick up those scissors, pick up that rock, just whatever the fuck is around. You're just in that space where you're like, there are no fucking rules. And I have no, like, it's right to life, defend it, do whatever. That works, man. It does. People have used it. It works. That's great. Premeditated cheating is, it's 100x. Okay? So that's what we're talking. That's weaponizing. So location. Now, kind of like Dustin's mass attack, you think, well, how can I do mass attack? You know what I mean? Like, if you're by yourself, you're by yourself. Well, environment, I'm going back to this. like Brad talked with environment. Environment is an enemy or an ally. It's like, you can use your environment as if you got other people with you. They can run interference, they can do disconnects for you, they can do all these things. So that's huge, right? So the mass attack can be like your family actually can operate like a well-organized team, right? And they will not expect that. So now all of a sudden your numbers are not what they thought they are. That's a massive shock to the system, right? That leaves a lot of vulnerabilities. When three guys are trying to jump on you, and all of a sudden your wife is, slicing an artery, okay, or hitting with a tackle at a fraction, like something, there's lots to do. But location is another one where you go, well, the bad guys determine the location, right? Because they time, intensity, duration, equipment, location. So you say, okay, that's 100% true. I can't control if they try to jump me when I'm coming out of the grocery store or whatever. But if we start looking and saying, well, how do I cheat? Okay, well, here's a couple things. One is I mental map, meaning what? I constantly vary my routes, right? Like, I don't go to the same grocery store all the time. Matter of fact, we have 3 different grocery stores around our house, and we break those up. You would not be able to consistently predict the day, time, and location that I go shopping. Okay, so I am now cheating by not allowing the bad guys to study routines. And somebody, they well, who's doing that? This is what they fucking do. Okay? You think they don't study, you think they don't educate, then you're a naive idiot.
Yeah.
Okay? So,
on the same,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and maybe you were going to say this and cut you off, but going off the location thing, for instance, coming out of the grocery store, like you just said, it's like, even if they know where you are, they find you, they randomly pick you at a grocery store as you come out. It's like, another way to use the location to your advantage is to not give them the transition moments they're expecting. How many people are walking to the car, hands full of groceries, so as soon as they get the groceries in the car, they jump in, shut the door, they don't lock it, and then they grab their cell phone and they're looking at their cell phone, oblivious to what's happening around them.
100%.
All of a sudden they open that door, attack.
Yep.
So don't give them that transition moment. That's another way to kind of control the location side of things, right?
Yes.
Be the most aware when they think you're going to be the least aware statistically.
That's right. You've just cheated. You've just put a cheat code into effect. And they're like, well, that's not fair that he got in and he's alert and blah, blah, blah. Another one off location. Let's just go back because we talked about the grocery store. And same thing to work. And, some people have a designated stall, but the time you start work, the time you leave work, and some people say, I can't control that stuff. You can typically more than you think. Some can't. Okay, fine. But the route you go to and from, who you walk out with, lots. I'm just giving you, people can start getting creative on their own. But then real quick, what about your house? Very few people fortify their house. Very few people cheat. Like bad guys want to kick your front door in. You know why? Because they understand that most front doors, the latch into the frame that the door sits in, you got this big heavy metal door, is on little 2-inch screws. Most people have never pulled those screws out and dropped in some 3.5-inch fucking wood screws deep into that. They've never drilled out and deepened or reinforced their deadbolt latch. You know what I mean? So they got this big metal door, yet they have no idea how easily those doors are kicked in. They've never looked at their house and thought, you know what? All the guy's got to do is smash that window, reach in and unlock my fucking door. Or smash the back window in the patio where neighbors can't see them and all this type of stuff. Or all they have to do is buy a coating of 3M. And there's this little tiny plastic film that once it's on your window, you can't fucking tell it's on there. It doesn't obstruct view or anything like that. But it makes it so they can beat that fucking window with a baseball bat. Some of them, depending on thickness, they can fucking use a shotgun and that thing won't break. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, I cheat. Then also the way I designed my house, I cheat. I cheat because I have certain choke points so that when people come through, like people talk about feng shui and setting your house up for good positive energy flow. I feng shui my house against violence, you know what I mean? So people come in where I have weapon stash and choke points and how I know I'm going to move and all these other things and where you have cell phones strategically hidden and all that stuff. And then your family's part of the plan. And somebody breaks in, you got 3-4 fallback positions, you got chokes, you got line of sight on people, you got all kinds of things, man. You got smoke grenades. And being like, they come in, all of a sudden someone's in the middle of your house and 3 smoke grenades drop off the top balcony and the house starts to fill with smoke. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm moving to. And all of a sudden these motherfuckers are gapping on smoke and can't find their fucking way out. And it's like causes chaos and confusion. You got a fucking siren grenade. You drop that thing. This thing's whistling. Woo! Like high-pitched whistles. You know, it's like these people are like, yeah, you break in my house and I'm cheating every step of the motherfucking way. It's the mindset for it. And yet none of that had anything to do with style or technique. But when it comes to right to life, and if I'm using cheat codes like that, I'm probably, what's happening a lot of times is I'm preventing it from ever having get to the point where I have to take someone's life. Because the cheat codes are so effectively destroying them early on. And we know something about escalation. The earlier you take action, the easier it is to stop it from hitting crisis. Right? That means that these cheat codes, strategies, tactics, these things work more effectively. The later it goes, right, and the more it comes to crisis, the less effective they are. Meaning that you're probably going to have to take someone's life. And it could start there, or it could mutate there as fast as you can blink. Like, I get that. But that's why you got to prepare for it all. So at the end of the day, if you're talking about violence, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And it's got to be more than an intellectual exercise. It has to be part of the training mindset. It has to be part of the culture of what you're training in. Because again, foundationally, I don't believe anybody has any business training for anything other than lethal force at the beginning of their training career. We're inverted from that. Most people would say, no, you have to start with very basic, very beginner stuff because they're not ready. They're not ready for that stuff. You have to earn that secret deadly knowledge. So you have to wait till you get to the higher belt levels to learn the really secret stuff, because somehow like your life is worth nothing when like you're here for self-defense. That's what I'm here for. So teach me how to defend my life. Why are you assuming that I have 8 years, 10 years, 15 years before my life or the life of my loved ones will be in jeopardy? Do you think so little of my life, the worth of my life, that you're not willing to show me? Like, you know how I could be better prepared to defend myself, and yet you won't show it to me? Is it like until I've spent 5 years and paid you $50,000? Like, what is it? What's your stipulation? Instead of just giving the best stuff right off the bat.
I know that microphone is on a like an arm, but if it wasn't, that would be a mic drop right there.
Yeah. Slap it down.
Because like, how do you argue that? Like when you put it in those terms, how utterly ridiculous does it sound?
To me, it's ludicrous.
It's ridiculous.
They like teaching a CPR course, but they're like, "Oh, sorry, you're not ready for chest compressions or rescue breathing. We'll teach you everything else."
Yeah, I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to teach you how to stop a major bleed like an artery. I'm not going to teach you that because that's just too advanced. That should be for trauma nurses and doctors only. Mm-hmm. Like, right? Doesn't make sense. So, anyways, all right. Final thoughts on this, guys?
Yeah, I think for me, just the one thing that is really stuck with me is when we talked about that space where cheating doesn't exist. I think that anybody listening definitely needs to reframe, because we've all been conditioned that cheating is bad. At a very young age in school, you're cheating on tests, you're cheating in phys ed or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's part of our society with it has that negative thought about it. But when it comes to this space, we have to identify, and it's like, reframe it, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Sorry, Dustin, go ahead. I just had a funny thought I'll share in a second.
I'll throw out another Dave Grossman quote because you had one earlier. And just amateurs talk hardware, professionals talk software. And I mean, that's what we're talking about. Amateurs are techniques, tools, preparedness, whereas professionals are software. It's strategy based.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And the thought that just hit my head, because we talked about how this, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, is a cultural thing. Like that's got to be, that culture has to be there 24/7 within your training organization, because everyone that's there, death unites us all. Every time that we leave from training, we want to be better because we might face our righteous fight. So we are all in this mindset. And when Trevor Hardy, who's one of my coaches and back in the day in the kickboxing, boxing, and he's a first degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and all this stuff. And so Trevor was down doing some training with me, and we of course got the blessing of him showing us some more stuff on the ground. But here we all are, all of these weaponized guys that want to train for violence, and he's sharing with us, jujitsu stuff, and trying to make sure it's really like, I think for the street this would be good and this would be good, and here's how I do this and modify this, and that's to sport. And then he came to a couple things and he goes and he shows, okay, and he goes knee up and he's crushing throats and doing all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, my instructor Anderson does this all the time to me. Like, I can't tell you how many times he's not only tapped me out from this but almost killed me and stuff. And he goes, but I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Like, yeah, we don't want to do that. That's dick moves. That's bullshit. Like, that's dick moves. That dick's move. Like, no, sorry, okay, we won't do that. And every single person in the room is like, excuse me, double down on that. Give us more of that shit. Like, that's what we fucking want. So you're saying that in jiu-jitsu, when guys are rolling jiu-jitsu and you do that, everyone thinks of you as like kind of like no, you fucking piece of shit. Like, that's cheating. Like that, like not cheating, but that's crossing a line. That's a dick move. And we're like, yeah, sign us up. Like, give me some more of the dick moves, please. Like, how am I gonna? I gotta be cheating, dude. If I get down on the ground, you're a first-degree black belt. If I'm rolling with you, like I'm doing some, dirty shit. I have to be, because remember, not in the context of a sport, but show me, because if I'm on the ground in a street fight, I'm not consenting to rolling around where a guy's gonna break my ankle or my fucking arm, or like that's like, what do I do then when my knee's bent backwards? Like, what's the next step? If you're willing to take my knee and bend it backwards, you're probably willing to kill me, or maybe now I can't defend my wife. So like, no, give us the shit that you don't like to show other people because they judge you for that. That's what I want. And those aren't even deep cheat codes. Those are just kind of, being an asshole. But I'll take it. So I thought that's a funny parallel, because every one of us in the room, when he said, no, but we don't want to do that because that's kind of the dick move stuff. Like, you got all these guys looking at each other going, excuse us? Like, sign us up, man. And he's kind of like, what the fuck's the matter with you people? Like, dude, I'm not in it for a sport. Like, I need to understand how to, like, relay injury here. So show me that shit. Okay, so I don't know. That was a funny thing, but. Okay, all right, guys. We're going to wrap it up here tonight. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us. Listen, I'm going to ask a big favor again. It's the only thing I ask. Help us grow our podcast. Help us grow our awareness. Again, we're not trying to promote what we do specifically. We're trying to promote the mindset behind how you need to weaponize to be able to better protect yourself, your family from violent criminal assault. It's got to start there. We stay focused on lethal force. We stay focused on, asocial violence. That is where we're at. How you do that takes less than 90 seconds. And what I need you to do is just wherever you download or listen to your podcast, hit like, subscribe, obviously, hit the like, and leave a comment. Leave us a rating, leave us a comment, give us some feedback, because the second you do that, it takes you less than 90 seconds. The second you do that, 10, 15, 20, 30 other people see this podcast. And out of that, you get 3 or 4 that'll listen to it. And that's how we expand this. If we don't get the ratings and the reviews, it goes nowhere. We're doing this all organically. We're trying to find the right people. It takes a certain mindset. Those individuals that genuinely believe it is their responsibility to protect themselves and their family from violent criminal assault, and want to invest the time and energy into going deep with us each week. So please do that. Follow us on YouTube. Again, like, subscribe, turn on your notifications so that you get all of the updates and releases. There's at least 5 new pieces of content every single week, including this podcast. And that's just the beginning. Lots more to come. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. So again, for myself, Greg LeBoeuf, Dustin Dodere, Brad Vandelay, thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. This has been the Education of Weaponized Man podcast. And until next time, please, everybody, stay safe, stay weaponized. We're going to chat again soon.